Good morning. Back on the Stridecast. My fourth week at it, starting week four, and I've got on another super cool, interesting guest this morning that I'm excited to have a chat with, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy as well. I'm here this morning with Vindy Teja. Vindy, thank you for being here.
Yeah, great to be here,
Good to see
Kat.
you. We didn't plan the purple, so we were both joking before we got on, and of course the video starts. Like, are we
I
actually
know.
wearing the same shade of purple? Not just
I think
purple.
so. I think
It's
we
like,
are.
yeah. And we both
I
admitted that they were shirts that we've had for quite a while, and we were like, oh, do we pull this one out today? And yeah, here we are. So not definitely not pre-planned, not something that we're trying. No setup here on the color purple. And then I'm oddly enough, my kid's purple basketball sitting on my desk, but
Oh, cute.
anyhow, purple. Oh wow! And it keeps going. And there's my purple smoothie: blueberries and banana. That's
So I
crazy.
think it's planned on your end. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. Swear to God, strange. Anyhow, Purple Monday. Um, Vindy, tell us who you are and what it is that you do, and yeah, all that makes Vindy Teja.
yeah. Well, who am I today? Uh, well, I'm a divorce coach, author, and speaker. So the primary thing I do is coaching, so life coaching as well as divorce coaching. Um, and divorce coaching is a little bit different. I have a legal background and I don't practice law, but I come from a legal background. And I also have the experience of divorce and parenting. And so I felt really strongly about this area, helping families manage their stress and, make the best possible decisions for themselves and their families. So that's kind of what I do. And I usually help people through sort of one of three phases that they're going through. So the first one would be, should I or shouldn't I? And that's like coming to the
Sure.
decision,
Right.
and helping them kind of uh, be aware of their options and coming to that decision and communicating the decision. And then the second one, I'd call it the business of divorce or the journey of divorce. And that's helping them through the actual process of divorce. So getting organized, getting the proper resources, referrals, knowing how to work efficiently and cost effectively. And also a lot of emotional support through that phase. And then
Sure.
I'd say the third one is the next steps. So as they're nearing the end of their divorce, what is their vision for their future, and coming up with sort of options and goals around that, and helping them become more independent, and also like letting go and moving on, because that's a big part of divorce as well.
Fascinating. I would get. I know there's particular friends that would kick me if I didn't ask the question, so I will. What does that look like today? What, in terms of being, we're spending time, a lot of time, a disproportionate amount of time with our significant others and our families, and my hunch there would be that, and I've done some reading about it as well in sort of the recent past around some of the stresses that's putting on the family dynamic. Yeah, what does that look like today, Vindy? Have you seen that shift in your work in the last 6 or 8 weeks?
Yeah, that's a really good question and completely on point, because, we're going to have either the baby boom or the divorce boom, you know? So, people are not used to spending this much time together. And,
Right.
for some couples, it's great because they normally have very hectic lives, and, they don't get many chances for romance. And so this has been welcomed. But, you know, that being said, people are not used to spending this much time together. So, you know, um, some are experiencing really genuine challenges, or this time has exposed an already weak or fragile relationship.
Right.
And, it might be financially or emotionally or physically abusive, or at the risk of becoming that way.
Hmm.
And then there's just the couples who, they just need some help, like, problem solving, communication, like they're not on the verge of falling apart, but they could really use some help. And you don't want that relationship to go from barely tolerable to unbearable. So, you kind of see all of it. And definitely, I think a lot of family lawyers have predicted that there is going to be a spike in the divorce rate after the pandemic.
Right.
So that remains to be seen. But yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Thank you for that. You and I talked before we went online here. We talked a little bit about this period of clarity for some people, and sort of, because we have more time with ourselves. Well, we have more time away from, from the environments that we're possibly being used to being in more often. So at the office, or out doing, sporting activities with our kids, or out for dinners with our spouses or with our friends, that there's these moments of truth, I think, that have sort of, presented themselves, since the pandemic has hit our backyard here in Vancouver, and Vindy's in Vancouver as well. So we're both local. Um, what is, because that is true, because I believe that is true, and I think you and I both felt the same way about that. What would be, if there was some inspiration? I mean, I've been very forward about, my intention with starting the podcast, and it's really just an opportunity for people to dial into a conversation. So whoever it is that's watching this, the goal is to leave them inspired in some way, maybe with some next steps or something that they could try in their own lives, or at least think about. Vindy, what would that, if there was some inspiration there for you related to this period of time from your perspective, what would that be for couples out there listening to this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that this has exposed a lot of people, right? It's a very naked space, because you're not rushing off to work. The kids are there, and so you have to be mindful of what you're saying in front of the kids, and so you get a lot of stress responses. And I think for me, at least, it's a huge time for not only reflection, but also self-acceptance and compassion. And that's for yourself as well as for the people that you're with, right? Your partner, your family, because even though we're all in it together, like we're on the same boat, we're not all experiencing the same storm.
Right.
So for some, it might be a little bit of a drizzle. For others, it's like a downpour. And, other people, they're experiencing tsunamis in their life right now. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to be, not dismissive of your experience, to really kind of sit with it, and, to take the time to, figure things out. But just compassion, I would say, is like the number one thing that comes to my mind.
I love that. I love that. And I think what I heard from you toward the end there, or at least what set in for me, was um, allowing ourselves to feel what we need to,
Mm-hmm.
and not pulling away from that or hiding from that. Um,
Yeah.
because that can get dangerous, and that can resurface, or whatever it is that you have happening for you now, that could show up at a later stage. So yeah, I think what's been, and really important for me as well, personally speaking, I think getting very vivid with myself, getting very real with myself. And I had
Mm-hmm.
mentioned this as well. I'm somebody who, is very proud of the fact that I live my life, generally speaking, with a relatively high level of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly during this period, that awareness requires me to dig at moments a little bit deeper, and to honor whatever is happening for me, because I know at some point it'll serve me and those around me much better if I'm more available, or if I'm more aware of what's happening for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
a good point.
yeah,
And I think being in this field, like, in the coaching field, or related fields, like, now's a moment to shine, like, and be of service. And because even whether it's reaching out to a friend or a family member who could use the connection, but also to, like, our clients and potential clients, because, people are struggling right now financially, and the courts are, at least in my field, the courts are mostly closed. So
sure.
that actually, there's a lot of stress around that. And
Yeah.
so alternative dispute resolution has become huge now. And so, people like mediators and divorce coaches now is like, they're really stepping up, which is really nice, because I've been talking to some of my colleagues in the field, and, they're offering their services at either free or slashed prices, because now is the time that people kind of need the guidance and need the support. So it's
Yep.
kind of cool to see all of that happen too. And I've done that with my clients, and I do that with new clients. And I just think that now is an important time to do that. People are starting to, maybe not get back on their feet, but, with the government subsidies and things coming in, they have a better idea of their financial picture. But, for a lot of people, it's bad.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, when it comes to colleagues and people in our industry, the self-help industry, I think broadly speaking, that this is an opportunity, I think, to really, for me, it's been to really connect back to my higher purpose, which is very simple: to be in service of those around me. Don't get me wrong. I'm very much in service of myself and taking care of my own needs, because I
Absolutely.
believe that is a requirement in order for me to be available for those around me. Leadership ideology here, but in order for those around me to be led by, if I want to consider myself to be a leader, it starts here. So taking care of myself. And I refer to that as self-leadership. Vindy, when I talk about, or when I mention self-leadership, what comes to mind for you?
That's a good question. When I think of self leadership, what jumps to my mind is self awareness. I think first, and then I think self management after that, and then awareness of others and relationship management. I think those four pieces, when I think about self leadership, and self care is in there, like what you mentioned, taking care of yourself. That I
Right.
think that's really important in the equation. But I think breaking it down to those parts, and I mean, it's a topic that I'm so passionate about, because I wrote a book and it kind of deals with this stuff, which is the self management and the self awareness piece, which I think are critical.
Perfect segue. Thank you for bringing up the book.
Yeah,
So first off, congratulations.
yeah. Thank
You just
you.
shared with me November 2019, you published your first book, yes?
Yeah.
Amazing. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, I love the title. It's called YOLO, which is an acronym, that stands for You Only Live Once. So it's
Yeah,
YOLO, Essential Life Hacks for Happiness. And and so my take in the book is really about that happiness isn't sort of a state of being. It's also a way of being. Um, and there's building blocks, and so that's why I use hacks, because it's like breaking the puzzle of happiness into its separate parts. And when you put the puzzle together, you have happiness. But then you have these hacks, and it's not rocket science to get there, because it was really important for me to simplify the process
sure.
without being simplistic, and that's kind of my MO.
People spend a disproportionate amount of time on a hamster wheel trying to find that happiness. Um, I will at times refer to it as, with clients, even with friends, people in my network, okay, it's a dragon, right? Like you're chasing a unicorn. Like
Yeah,
it exists, but
yeah.
there isn't a finish line where somebody's going to reach over and put a medal over your neck and say, hey, you found it, you did it. And we can find that, we may find that funny. But I
Right.
think, and I do at times, but I think there's a percentage of people around us, and a relatively high percentage of people around us, that believe that there is that sort of, it'll hit them like a ton of bricks, or there'll be a defining moment where they go, oh, okay, I'm happy now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about, so relevant to this period, in our lifetime? Can you talk about those pieces, Vindy, like the little, you had said, referring to the puzzle, and
Yeah.
taking pieces and bringing them together? What is relevant, do you believe, in that, and what might be helpful or inspirational to anybody that's listening during this period of time related to that puzzle?
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, that's a great question, because I think the mindset you bring to just the question of what is happy, like what you were talking about, like, people wanting, it's like a proverbial magic pill or wand that, they wave it and they can get there. And, you know, and some people will be like, oh, when when I get that job, or when I get that promotion, or when I buy that house, or when I lose those 10
Yeah.
pounds. And those are all kind of fleeting. Those are things that can happen and then they can go away, and those things can change. So if you're tying your happiness to those moments, it's a different mindset. And I mean, at least when I think about the pandemic, especially, I think that that's a really relevant question right now, that happiness isn't the avoidance of challenges and problems and setbacks. It's really how you approach those things. And it's about being intentional about your life and what it has to offer. I think that's the key at least from my perspective, the key to the happiness puzzle. And there are sort of building blocks in terms of, how you approach, goals, and how you approach, like, how you think of, even the words that you use when you're speaking to your friends. Are you the yeah but person? Yeah but and so there's all these little things that can go into the way we communicate, the way we think, the way we feel, and what kind of challenges we take on, and just being curious about life, because that's kind of, for me, that's a huge key, is curiosity. Just being curious about others and what their experiences, like what you were saying about being in service to others. Be curious about what people might be going through, because it might be different from what you're going through. But when you bring that approach of curiosity, it just makes things more fun, and it makes things more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't have time to really, sit there and go, woe is me, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. That's, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Man, a lot of things come to mind as you share that. One of them is the yeah, but. I call my 4-year-old Key, and occasionally I'll go, "Hey, is your name Mr. Butt Butt?" "What do you mean, Dad?" And he'll laugh. He said, "No, my name's not Mr. Butt Butt. Why do you say that?" I'm like, "Because every time I ask you to do something, you go, yeah, but Dad, but Dad." Mr. Butt Butt.
That's
Yeah.
cute.
Don't be the yeah, but guy. You know what's interesting? So, and I'm sure you find the same. Full disclosure,
Mm.
with those that I work with, being inherently interested in their story and what they have going on for them is it's helpful for me. My level
Mm.
of interest in their story and what's happening empathetically, so selflessly listening to somebody and their ideas or their story,
Yeah.
serves me well. And at one point I was like, oh, I shouldn't share that, because my engagements professionally, or even within my network, when I have certain conversations, it should never be about my needs. Now, it's not. So the primary sort of purpose of engaging professionally is to be in service of and to help, those that I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with. But maybe a powerful takeaway for people that are listening to this is that you don't have to be a professional coach. You don't have to be, you don't have to work in a practice where you're working with people one-on-one. Try this with your spouse. Try this with your kids. Try this with your
Mm.
friends. Just listen and be interested.
Absolutely.
And there's
Yeah.
a ton that can come out of that. That's incredibly powerful for us. So, I think one of the things that I've continually training myself to do, but I've gotten much stronger at doing in the last 5 years, I'd say particularly, is listening.
Yeah.
I've listened more in the last 5 years than I had in the previous 35 years of my life, I would say,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that
collectively.
cliche, you have two ears and one mouth for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah,
Absolutely.
listening is such a gift. Like, when you do it with a spouse or a child or a friend, it's a gift that you give if you really listen. Because, there's so many talking heads in the world, right? And,
Yeah.
people just sort of, um, they feel kind of dismissed almost, like, because you'll say something like, I have a headache, and someone will pipe in and say, well, I had a headache too last week. And all of a sudden you just stop talking about your whole experience, because, and they're trying to empathize, but really, you end up shutting down. So yeah, listening is such an important skill. I mean, that should be taught in school, like an actual course
Right.
in listening, a unit. Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool? Maybe we
That's
could teach
interesting.
it. Maybe
Does it
we could teach
exist?
it.
Yeah, no kidding. But then we would just sit there in silence, waiting for the other person to speak.
We'd be the perfect demonstration of listening.
You're right. Exactly. You just sit and stare at each other, wait for the other person to say something. Hey, Vindy. So there's probably people that are watching this that are going, okay, yeah, great, Cav, Vindy. You're talking about the importance of listening and how much, how beneficial that can be to the person that is on the receiving end of dialogue or of interaction. What are the starting points? So how do I go about doing that, right? Like, how do you, maybe something as simple as how do I set my intention when I get into a conversation and say, hey, I'm going to listen. Should we share share some tips back and forth?
Yeah. I
What
think
comes to
that's a
mind
great
for you?
idea. And I think that that's a good one to start with, setting the intention. And then I think another really great step is to, again, become self-aware in the conversation
Hmm.
that, am I having a dialogue in my own head while this person is talking? Because then you're not listening, because you're coming up with your response or how you'd like to, and so even that awareness of self and what's going on for me, I think makes you eventually a better listener.
Yeah, it's a great one. Listening to listen rather than listening to respond. I can't remember
Correct.
which one of my guests brought that up, but
Yeah.
somewhere in the last couple of weeks, somebody had mentioned that on a podcast, and it's such a powerful idea. I'm going to say, so what's critical in my work, but then who I am as a person as well, is creating that environment. So facilitating the environment where people feel safe enough to share what is happening for them. And I have found that the best way of doing that is to actively listen. So just sit back and say, hey, Vindy, hey, wife, hey, son, hey,
Yeah.
friend, I'm just here to hear you. And
Yeah.
so how effectively can you create that room or that space between you and that person
Yeah.
where they feel that you are there selflessly. So
Hmm.
you're not there for your own motives. You're there to give somebody an opportunity um, to feel what they need to feel out loud,
Yeah.
and not be judged and not sort of
Yeah.
just on the edge of your seat waiting for your opportunity to contribute something.
Yeah. Well, even what you said, like your body language, when you kind of step for, move forward, that body language of just sitting back and even opening up the shoulders,
Yeah,
that is very inviting. And so I think, again, it's that self-awareness around, okay, how am I coming across? Am I looking like this eager beaver who just wants to jump in, or
yeah.
am I relaxed and am I listening? So I do think that that's a good step as well. And asking questions, I find another good one is when somebody says something, to ask a further question, and what was that like, or can you explain that? Then they know that you're actually paying attention, because you're asking a question about the very thing they're talking about.
Well, you can't give away all of our tricks, Vindy, and what it
Oh
is
yeah,
that
that's
we do.
true.
I
We better
think,
stop there. We better
right?
stop there.
I think what is one of the things that I love so much about what it is that I do is of course, we have systems that we follow and certain approaches, but my thing is to ask, hopefully, a deeply thought provoking question
Mm,
and then roll my shoulders back and go, oh, tell me, and so my work is to be interested. My work is to be interested in my work. And I'm sure yours as well is to be interested in what's happening for the person that you're engaging with. And then again, giving them enough space where they feel comfortable enough to speak from whatever place they want to. But
hmm
that work is on us professionally, but then this side of the table. So the listener, to sort of, again, to facilitate the environment where that person feels safe and comfortable enough to be them and think their own
Yeah,
thoughts.
yeah.
That's awesome.
And
There it is. There it is, people. Whoever's
the
listening.
wrap.
Yeah, listen to listen and not to respond,
hmm
and then tied into and be aware of that. And it starts there, and then there's also that creating the environment. So
Yeah.
making the person that you're speaking with feel safe, that you're
hmm
not there to respond or leap onto them as soon as you have an
hmm
opportunity to, or as
Yeah.
soon as they take a breath, but
Yeah.
you're in fact there to be a sounding board. And
Yep.
there's a lot of power there, the
There
power
is. Yeah.
of
And stay
curiosity and listening.
curious. And stay curious. I would end it with,
Right.
like, stay curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of curious, I'm curious. We haven't talked since you've done this, but your TED Talk last year,
Oh yeah.
what was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
experience like?
Oh my gosh. It's like so grueling. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Sounds
Yeah.
perfect. Let's
I
go.
know, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody want to sign up? Yeah, it was so interesting. And I learned so much as a speaker because, and this program was really well organized. We would have sessions every couple of weeks and there would be teaching, and then we would get in front of our fellow speakers and all the coaches, and we would deliver our whatever stage our talk was at, and then we would get all this feedback. So you go in there, you walk in and you think you're a rock star, you got your idea figured out, and
Sure.
then they give you all these tips, and then I'd almost be crying on the way home. I'd be like, oh, should I even be doing this? Because they're challenging you. So it was a really, I mean, I really leaned into this experience, and I felt like I got a lot out of it. I really was happy with the talk that I gave. And then they asked me, I mean, I must have done something right, because they did ask me to come back and join their committee.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, which is neat. So now I'm involved as a volunteer. So I was on the curation and selection committee for this year's TEDx that
Incredible.
happened just at the end of January. So
Right.
that was a completely neat experience, being on the other
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding. Good for you,
Yeah.
Vindy. That's
Yeah.
exciting. And
Yeah,
is
it
that
was.
something that will, I mean, so now that you're involved
Mhm.
with TED, so will that be a thing for a while? Like, do you intend to be a part of that as a
Yeah.
volunteer, like in that capacity for some time moving forward?
I hope so. I mean, they want me to come back. So I must have done something right this year too.
Nice.
So it's actually really neat because they do it differently now, in the sense that when you're a curator, you actually go out and look for potential candidates to apply. So it's a curated event. Like, what kind of ideas? Like, my division is business law and human rights. So I go out and I sort of find people that might be great candidates or are interested in speaking, and I get a chance to kind of talk with them and invite them to apply. They still have to go through the process just like everybody else, but
Sure.
there is this element, which is really neat, because I've been meeting so many interesting people as a result.
I
So
bet.
it's right up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There it
it's
is.
fun.
Aspiring TED speakers. Find Vindy, make good friends with her. She'll help
Yeah,
you through the process.
yeah. That's right.
Um, that's really cool. I'll make sure I share I'll share if you're okay with it, I'll share the link to the YouTube video, because I've seen it, to your TED talk,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in the description. And then of course, where do we find your book? Can we find it on Amazon? Is it something that I can
Yeah, yeah,
download from home?
on all major online retailers, so Amazon, Chapters, iTunes or Apple, Google, all of
Very
those.
cool.
Yeah,
I'm gonna leave. Yeah, I'll make sure I leave the links in the description below, so people want to purchase the book or watch your TED video. I'll
yeah.
have that there, and then of course your website as well. What's the easiest place for people to find you, Vindy?
Yeah, the easiest place would probably be my website, which is vindyteja.com. So it's
Okay,
vindyteja.com. I also have a YouTube channel where I've posted my TED there, and there's links to kind of the book and all my social media handles as well.
perfect.
And yeah, and I co-authored another book, which is coming out right in time for Mother's Day, just around the corner, May 5th. And it's an
Yeah.
anthology called Passed Down from Mom, a collection of inspiring stories about moms and motherhood. So I forgot to mention that. I'm super excited about that.
Wow, is that ever cool? That's like the 5th of May is
Just around the
like
corner.
Wednesday of next week, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
already
yeah.
May?
I
Wow.
know, I know. It's kind of hard when, like, the one day melds into the next.
Right. I think we were all trying to waiting for March to get rid of March, because March, I felt like it was like March the 95th at one point. It was like
Oh
March is
my
just not
gosh,
gone. And
so
and
true.
then April just went like that. You know?
Yeah, yeah, that's so
Yeah.
true. That's what
Yeah.
I found as well.
Yeah. Super exciting. Thank you so much for sharing. I will make sure I get links for all of what you've just shared, and I'll put them in the description. Vindy, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for spending the time with me.
Yeah, it was
Bef-
fun.
Thank you. Before we take off, what's one piece that you want to leave with everybody?
Oh, goodness.
Be inspiration during this period, be it people that are in, I- I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to, because I've been thinking about this a lot, is this whole thing of what I mentioned about we're in it together, but we're all having a unique experience. And I think that that's been so big for me because I've been paying attention. I've been on social media a lot more, and I've been trying to put out, not just inspiring things, but just also comic relief, tips for couples who, want to communicate better. Like because I realize not everybody's having the same experience. And so I think that to really honor that, even in your own home, like, with your kids, with your family, not everybody's having the same experience. So just to be really mindful of that. And I think it just makes, it'll make getting through this easier, I think, for a lot of people.
Love that. Thanks, Vindy. We'll see each
Yeah.
other again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, Cal.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Vindy. Enjoy the rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.